Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of Expected Buffalo, the Offering. And we're going to have a different conversation this time than the last time we talked, a little bit of a different atmosphere. So the last time we put one of these together, the Sabres were 0-2, coming off the trip to Prague with a couple games on the weekend. They split that, I guess you could say, weekend series with the Kings and then with the Florida Panthers. They finally get a win on the board. But the good news is, in those two games, it looked like a much different team than we saw in Europe. Promising. They put together really, I think, the kind of effort and team performance that Lindy Ruff wanted to see, that he's hoping for, and what we hope to see carry forward into the season. So we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about some stuff with the team, some of the numbers so far, special teams, some players, a goaltending situation right now. Look ahead to the games this week: Pittsburgh, Columbus, Chicago, and then the front office. I do want to have a quick conversation about that with the report from the fourth period, to mention that a little bit. But let's start with the last two games against the Kings and the Panthers. So the Kings game is one of those ones where, like, if it is the middle of December, you kind of probably just throw it away, whatever. But being the third game of the season and another game that you lose when you already lost your first two games, it's a little bit of a more frustrating one that they realistically had no business losing. They were the better team throughout that game. Maybe the third period, the Kings pushed, and then they got their tying goal early and ended up scoring their two more. But they were in control of that game for a lot of it. Darcy Kemper played good, so credit to him. But there was opportunities they just didn't finish. And, that was a concern for 3 games. That changed when Florida came to town. But I was overall encouraged with that. And you had to hope that it was a situation that followed into the next game, and then it's something we're going to see moving forward here. And it did. It followed into the next game. They were equally as good against the Panthers. They started a little sleepy in the first 5 minutes. Florida jumped on them, but then from there, they took care of business. And I know you can say no Bobrovsky, Spencer Knight, no Tkachuk, he was sick, no Barkov, he was hurt. Yes, completely understand. Those things definitely do come into play and probably a factor, but they still took care of business. They had a team come in the building that was injured, sick, whatever. Took care of it, got the 2 points they desperately needed to kind of get some breathing room here as we head on a road trip coming up that I think is pivotal. It's 3 teams that you should definitely get points against, but I don't want to get too ahead of myself here. Let's kind of keep it focused on this weekend first, or this past weekend. I'm sorry. I guess where I want to probably go next with it is probably the power play is the one thing that's a little bit confusing. There's still struggles. They don't have a power play goal all season still. And it feels like every game it's something different. The first few games, it was entries. And then against the Kings, they had a lot of power play opportunities that probably they would have got one. They at least get a point out of that game, if not win. But they had a lot of chances, you could say, so that was a little bit better. But then Florida wasn't that great again. There was issues with entries, just not a lot of chances. And I don't want to say it's confusing because it's going into a second year of doing this, even a third year. It started off hot the first half 2 years ago when Tage was just ripping bombs, but once that ended, they haven't been a good playoff team. They've had no answers. Now, this year isn't just try to get the puck to Tage. That's not what they're going for. And they've done some different things, and it has looked good at times. But it just seems jumpy. It seems like they've gone from being too slow with the puck to maybe being a little bit too quick now at times. A little jumpy to get the puck off their stick, and then they're forcing things and turnovers, and it goes back down. They're forcing it on entries. There's no cohesion with those two groups. So definitely frustrating to have that because that's something that needs to improve. It's still early in the season, and you hope that works its way out. But if it's a lot like last year where that unit doesn't give you anything, it's going to make it difficult to be a team that competes for a playoff spot moving forward. You can't have a power play that was as bad as it was and ineffective as it was last season. It's just not something that they have the talent or the ability to survive and to battle through to be a team that's going to compete with the other teams in the East to get likely one of those 2 wildcard spots. So that's got to improve. I think the talent level is there. They'll try some new things. They'll see what they can do. They'll probably rotate some players around here to try to find that perfect, I guess you can say, group or kind of that cohesion or, so we'll see. We'll give it a couple more weeks for sure. And you just kind of hope it's a new coach, new system thing, and they eventually get going. You pop one, and then maybe, it starts to steamroll for you. But there's still a lot of the same concerns that we saw last year. So it's a little alarming, but still early, so we'll give it some time. Flipping it to the good side of things, only 4 games, of course, but it's always funny to look at these small sample numbers. But in the 4 games they've played, they have, at 5-on-5, some pretty good team numbers from an underlying numbers perspective. So their shot share at 57% is ranked 3rd in the league entering play tonight. Their shot quality, so their expected goal share at 5-on-5, 53% is ranked 9th in the league going into the games tonight. Expected goals for 2.67 is 15th in the league. Expected goals against is 2.39, which is 11th in the league. So we've seen this story before, so I'm not going to get overly carried away with it. We definitely want to see it continue to play out and not just be kind of a short 2-game thing, and then we see it revert back to what we saw in Europe. Still early, we'll see. But I think it's encouraging because these are similar numbers to what you would see from a Lindy Ruff team in the past in New Jersey when they had a roster and they were healthy, and then in Dallas. You've seen these type of numbers. The expected goal share was good. The possession numbers were good. So it's encouraging. And I think if you just watch the game itself, it's encouraging that they're getting that speed game going. And it's not only a forechecking or a point shot thing that we talked about last time that we saw a lot of in Europe, but they started to get the transition game going. They started to go out and get things going up the ice to use their speed to get out and try to create offense that way, which I think aligns with they've been better defensively in terms of their exits. They've been cleaner. The passing has been a little bit better. So all encouraging signs for sure that you could take moving forward. And I think it was something we looked at out of the gate. Now you didn't get that, but these last 2, you got it. So now we have to figure out which 2 games were real. Was it more close to what we saw in Europe, or was it more closer to what we saw in those 2 home games when they got back from Europe? And, Pittsburgh is not the best team, from a roster standpoint. They're not what they used to be. So that's a team you definitely could take advantage of. Columbus, we'll get into that a little bit here. And then Chicago is Chicago. So you definitely want to see it keep going. But from a player perspective too, if you guys want to shout out, Ryan McLeod has been really good. That's been an excellent pickup for them. His honest numbers are really good. The scoring isn't really there, but I think it'll start to come a little bit. But looks like it's working out really well for them so far. And even if you look at Edmonton, a team that's really struggling, with speed, they look like a slow team. They're losing as of now 2-0 to the Flyers. Could be 0-4 potentially if they end up losing this game. So, it's been a great fit, and full marks so far to Lindy Ruff and Adams for bringing him in and make the 3rd line center. And it's worked out for them, not only at 5-on-5, but I think he's been a really good penalty killer for him too. So far, so good. And that one, Jordan Greenway, I want to call him, give him credit. He's been excellent since day one, even going into the preseason and then carrying it over to the regular season. He's been really good. Looks quicker, even looks faster. He's really, I think, bought into the system, and really, I think, has put in the effort to stand out on this team and to play his role effectively. So I was somebody who doubted that he really was a fit on this team and what they wanted to do. So definitely hand up, completely got that one wrong so far. But I hope it continues. I hope he keeps playing that way because he's an effective player when he does it. Again, the scoring's not always going to be there, but I think he provides you more than that. He's a bigger body. Penalty killing, too, I think is a big piece of what he's done, too, and why that unit has looked better. This not even say better, but they've looked good because I think they were decent last year. So Full marks to Jordan Greenway. And then Tage, I think, has been good. There's always that early concern with Thompson. He starts off a little bit slow. He's in the game. He's making things happen still. And like just there's chances, there's opportunity, especially in the Kings game. I mean, he could have had 3. Just not his night. Luck didn't go his way. A couple posts, a nice glove save. But then he comes back and scores a goal in one of the next game. So I am encouraged by him. I'm encouraged by that line with Zach Benson there. I think that's pretty good. And if Peterka does play tomorrow or today when you're listening to this against Pittsburgh, it probably makes sense to keep Benson on that top line with Tage and Tuck, and then to move Peterka maybe down to Cousins and Quinn, who I think had a better game against Florida, but there's still some inconsistency there. You're not seeing what you want to see. It's not clean all the time. And maybe if you put Peterka back there, it can reunite some of the chemistry they had back a couple of years ago when they were really dynamic linemen. Cousins had his great year, and Peterka and Quinn were rookies. So, I mean, that seems like the logical route, but we'll see what Ruff does there when all is said and done. And the last 2 I want to call out was Power and Byram. I think that pair has looked really good so far, especially Owen Power. You can make an argument. He might be the best player in the team so far. He's played very well. Not only has his defensive game improved, but I think offensively he's generating and creating a lot as he has in the past. And it's really standing out for how effective and how impactful he has been for this team. And you can only hope that continues, because if you have him just hit that elite level, and then Darlene too, I mean, you have 2 cornerstones locked in for a long time on your team that are very young. So that's huge. And Byram, I think, has fit well there. We're not seeing the turnovers that we saw last year or the poor play defensively. So he's made some plays. There's been moments, don't get me wrong. It's not always going to be clean with Byram. That's kind of one of the things you accept, but I think it's been better. I think he's looked, I don't know if I would say calmer, but maybe more comfortable so far this season. And I think it's allowed him to play his game a little bit more. So full marks to them. Great job there between those 2 so far. And you got to hope that sticks together, because really it's interesting when you look at some of the numbers. I think it was top 15 or top 20. The Sabres 3 pairs are top 20, top 15 and top 20 in on-ice expected goal share. So that's something you don't see very often. And again, early numbers, goofy things happen with early numbers early in the season, but definitely encouraging sign that you might have some chemistry there with those 3 pairs, because it could definitely stabilize things for you. All right, the next thing I want to get to here that I found interesting, but also I like that the way Ruff is handling it so far, is the goaltending rotation. So Levi and Luukkonen have both been fine. I haven't had any issues with them in any of their games. I thought maybe in the first game of the season against the Devils, Luukkonen looked a little bit spazzy, but nothing crazy. Nothing that's overly concerning. Both of them are basically in goal save above expected are dead even. So basically breakout even. Levi in Evolving Hockey is a 0.09, and Luukkonen is a minus 0.24. So like you're right there. But I do like how Ruff is utilizing both of them. I was a little bit concerned that Levi might not see the net that often, but we've seen both of them play 2 games so far through 4. And then you're going to get a split here. You're going to get probably Luukkonen against Pittsburgh, and then you'll get Levi against Columbus. And I would anticipate Luukkonen then back against Chicago. But yeah, I mean, that's good. That's, it's a little bit different than the Lindy Ruff ways of the past when he would really just lean on one guy, and that's his guy. He's utilizing both of them, keeping them both fresh, and they're both playing well. So that's good and encouraging. And I'm glad to see that Ruff kind of had that plan, and in that he's making sure they're both being utilized, because I think that's definitely the best way to go about it. So looking ahead, like I said, the rest of this week, the way the schedule breaks out, there's going to be a lot of gaps here in the first month or 2 of the season. But we finally get a 3 games and 4 night stretch here. So we have Pittsburgh, we're 3 games on the road, not to mention the Penguins tomorrow or tonight, Columbus the next day, Chicago on Saturday. Pittsburgh and Sabres games are always, I feel like they always struggle in Pittsburgh. That could be wrong. Just in my head, I think that's always a thing, that they struggle in Pittsburgh. I guess we'll see. Columbus is going to be an interesting one. So they had their home opener tonight. And that, of course, was an emotional, scene with the Johnny Gaudreau stuff. They did a really good job with all of that. So you wonder what the emotion level is going to be there that you're going into. So that's always, and I don't want to relish in that. It's always going to be something with Gaudreau, and I feel like it's going to be weird. And I don't want to say weird in a bad thing. It's just it's always it's a tough situation that it's always going to be thinking about him this year with Gaudreau in that situation, and you're kind of low key rooting for the Blue Jackets because you maybe you hope something magical there happens with that team, and for a while they've been through the Gaudreau thing now, and then Kivlanis a few years ago with him passing away tragically in the offseason too. Some of those guys have been through a lot. So on the side, low key, I hope things go well for Columbus this year. The Boone Jenner injury is tough. But yeah, you don't know what kind of environment you're going to be walking into playing back-to-backs. That could be a tough ask. But you never know. We'll see how that turns out. And then Chicago, I think on Saturday is when you got to get. Chicago's a tough place to play. The Blackhawks are a little bit better than what you dealt with last year on the roster they put around Connor Bedard. So they're a little bit better this year, but I still think that's a game that's certainly winnable. So really, I think with losing the first 3 games of the season, they put themselves in the spot here where they got to take 6 out of 8. It gets you back in the thick of things here, kind of course corrects from your slow start, and then you look at your remaining schedule for the end of the month, and you try to really get yourself back on track here, because once you get through that 3 game road stretch here, you have 1, 2, 3, 4 games at home. The Stars, Red Wings, Panthers, and then Islanders all on home ice. So you can really start to put some numbers or points on the board here to set yourself up correctly after the slow start. If you get 2 out of 4 or 2 out of 6, even 1 out of 6 in that trip, I think it's going to be really back to depressing times around here. So let's try to keep the positivity going for sure, and definitely get at least 6. I'll sell for 5, but I think the goal should be 6 there, and get yourself going here to course correct from the slow start. So the last thing on my list to touch on is the front office and Kevyn Adams. So the fourth period had a report yesterday that they put out that there were some early rumblings that Kevyn Adams' job could be in trouble, and then that there could already be they have somebody in mind to replace him. So I put some things on Twitter about it, yesterday. So here's kind of the full-fledged thought process / what I know about this whole situation. One, I don't think Adams is in trouble out of the gate here unless things really go poorly, and I mean really go poorly. I would be pretty shocked if he doesn't get the full season at the very least. There's just that they have a plan in place, and he just hired a new coach, and they have the roster build the way they want it, and they have that cap space that they keep telling you that they'll use if they find something that works. I think there's a lot in motion here for the owner to step in and pull the plug early if there's a slow start. Like, let's say they walk out of this month with 8 points or 6, whatever. I don't think you're going to see any knee-jerk reactions there. I think Adams might be more comfortable in the spot he's in than some people think or even want him to be. And there's reasons behind that, which we'll get to in a moment here. But the only thing that really, I guess, aligns a little bit with what Dave and Dennis were talked about in their podcast and article, is there was I heard some talk at the end of last season about a succession plan. So basically, it would be Adams would go up to however you want to. I don't know what is that title be, but overseer of hockey operations. Jason Carmanos would then become the general manager, and then Sam Ventura would likely move up as well. That didn't happen. I don't think right now it will happen in the near future, or at least during the season. That's for sure. I think it's something that's in their back pocket in case somebody comes calling for Carmanos or tries to poach him for a general manager job, and that would, of course, be in the offseason. So I'm not sure we're at that point now. It also could be used as a tool to reset if things go poorly and you want to get a different person overseeing the roster itself. That's another opportunity. But there's a lot of, I don't want to say pushback, but there was some concern about, well, what has Adams done to deserve a promotion? And I think we get a little bit too caught up in this being a promotion. Well, technically it is, I guess. I think it's a restructure of the organization is the way to look at it. So Kevin Adams is highly thought of in by the ownership. He has a good relationship. I don't really see. I just think it'd be really tough for Terry Pegula to let Adams go. So that's why I think there could be a situation where he bumps him into another role as the overseer of the hockey operations, and then you have somebody else, manage the roster on a day-to-day basis. So to be real about Kevin Adams and his hockey decisions and roster building, I think that's one thing we could set that over here. But from what I know about Adams, what people have told me, and then even if you just kind of watch where he's worked, the one skill set that Adams has is he's very good at running an organization. He's organized. I think he's really good at, getting his team to collaborate, to listen to everybody's ideas, and then take those ideas and turn them into, functioning plans or things. Not only with the Sabres in the hockey operations role he's in now, but I think we saw a little bit at Harbor Center. I think we saw that when he was on the business side of the Sabres organization itself. That's one of his skills, and it's a lot of collaboration that happens in that front office. He hears everybody's ideas, makes everybody feel important, like they're heard, and I think that's important. But if you're not completely thrilled, well, I guess two scenarios. If you're not completely thrilled with the way the roster is performing, then you can not fire him, but bump him up to a role that makes a little bit more sense. You bring in Carmanos, who has more, I guess you could say, more experience in the NHL and front offices, because he does have that. You have somebody else overseeing the roster technically from a day-to-day basis, and then you go about things that way. And I understand the argument that some people make, well, this front office doesn't really deserve the opportunity to stay together, or why would you not do a full search outside the organization? For me, I look at it two ways. One, I think there are some really smart people in this front office that I think would be coveted around the league. Carmanos has had general manager experience. Sam Matura is one of the most highly thought of analytics guys in the NHL. And that's just those two alone. I think the other two guys, Dom and Matt, are two intelligent guys too from the analytics standpoint that are well thought of. And then your scouting staff, especially your amateur scouting staff, has done a really good job from a draft perspective. So, you have a lot of the meat to a decent front office. I just think some things have gone. I don't even know what the right word is, because for me, it's, I'm not. A lot of Adams' moves that he has made, I don't disagree with a lot of them. There might be only like one or two that I don't like. I think I would be in favor of a lot of things he's done. For me, I think it's the inaction that really has hurt him the most, is he hasn't done that big home run swing. You can say the Byram and Middleset trade, maybe, I don't know, he hit a hard double off the wall. But I just don't think there's that big move that really shook the dynamic of this team or put them over the top. And we've been waiting for that for 2 years. And I think it's the inaction more than the actual things that he's done that has slowed Adams down or not allowed his team to get over the hump. So coming back to that, if you kind of want to keep that together and not have too much change, but also still make a structural change because you didn't get what you wanted, I think that's the clearest path. The other thing here that is important to but to consider is, I don't know about this. Okay, so here's how it was put to me. Terry wants the Sabres organization ran a certain way. That is how it was put to me. I'm not I don't know what I don't know what that means, because that was the only detail I was given. Is he wants the organization ran a certain way, and these people in charge have done essentially what he's asked for, and he's familiar with them, and have ran the organization in the way that he wants it to be run. And I don't think this is necessarily just a financial thing. I think it's from an organizational standpoint of there's not chaos, there's not unrest, if you will, disagreements constantly, things you're hearing about turmoil in your front office, your coach and GM not on the same page, stuff that's happened in the past year, which I don't think is what has happened here. There's been more of a continuity and kind of a clear path moving forward. I think there's also financial parts to it too, but I just want to make sure that when I'm saying that, everybody understands that that's not all I'm talking about. So as I was saying, these people that are in charge have done what he's asked for in that sense, from a variety of different reasons, or different direction or ways he's wanted things done. And I think that plays a role, and that's important. Terry has felt burned in the past. He's even said so himself about hiring from outside the organization and hockey people, and that's why Adams is in the role he's in now. So I just don't think, if he doesn't have to, he's not going to want to essentially blow up his front office, bring somebody else in, and kind of have them rebuild that entire front office. One, that sounds terrible. It's an, I don't say a rebuild, but maybe a reset, and who knows how long that'll take to go through all of that. That's not fun. So yeah, I just think all signs point to that's the logical thing that could unfold here is some sort of everybody takes a step up situation. We saw that in Vegas, saw that in Colorado. Of course, different situations, those teams have success, the Sabres don't have. Totally get it. But I think that could be more likely than seeing a front office clean out. It would have to be really bad for that to occur. Like, there would have to be basically so bad that you can't bring it back. You just have to, I don't want to say restart, but you almost do. You got to reset it, and try to regroup the best you can and get things going in the right direction. I really hate talking about that, because like that scenario is not something that I'm prepared to go through. So I really hope things do work out here. But yeah, I just wanted to get some information out, some thoughts out, things that I've heard, and what some likely scenarios would be, and kind of where everything stands from an organizational perspective. So this one's a little bit longer than your normal offering. We're going to be pretty closer to 30 minutes. But yeah, I think that's all for now. Enjoy the remainder of the games this week. We'll talk again soon, maybe even before we get that Chicago game in. We'll get one more of these out here. So thanks for listening, everybody. Enjoy the next few days, and we will talk again soon. See ya.